Hello, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about functions, specifically just functions. We're not going to talk about parameters, arguments, returns, any of that. We're going to talk about those on Wednesday. Today we're just going to do a brief introduction to functions and just the bare function, so none of the other stuff. Okay, so what a function is it's basically a repeated block of code. So similar to a for loop where you can do something a lot of times, a function is sort of like that. Uh, I mean, it's sometimes not called a function, sometimes it's called a procedure. I think it's called a procedure as well in Python. Is I can't remember, but for the most part, it's called a function. And what that basically means is the function is kind of like a variable of a sort where there's a name and then it will do something. And then when you call that function, it's going to do that thing. So you can repeatedly call that function and you can repeatedly do that thing. Again, similar to a for loop, except you can control when it happens. Okay, so how do we create a function? A function is created like so. First, def. You're going to define the function. Uh, you're going to make it exist. So Python is one of the languages where order matters. So you need to have your functions before you can call them. So in some other languages, you can call your functions before actually creating them. In Python, you have to create your functions before you can call them. So you can define your function, and then later on, you can call your function. So if you do your function call above it, which I'll teach you that in a second, you might run into an error. Okay, so anyways, it's def, and then the name of the function. So in Python, when you name a function, a lot of the times you're going to put an underscore in it. So even when you're naming variables in Python, the norm is to put underscores where there should be spaces. Again, we learned things like camel case and upper having an uppercase letter at the beginning of each word. Python uses underscores as spaces. Okay, so let's create a function. Let's call it print hello. Okay, so this is going to be our function name. So this is the name of the function. And then afterwards, we put these parentheses. And then just like if statements and for loops, there's a colon, the double dot colon afterwards. And then you drop a line. And then afterwards, this is all you need to do to create a function. And then anything that goes inside will be part of the function. So there is an indentation here. So anything indented will be part of this function. So for print hello, we can say print hello, or we can do something else as well inside of this. So you can see how this works. Okay, cool. So this is our function. This function will do this. You don't need to do an underscore. It's just the norm in Python. Yeah, I haven't really seen this in other languages. I don't have much experience with other languages, but in the languages that I've studied, you don't usually have underscores. It's kind of like a Python norm. Like like for other languages, I'd probably say like print hello like that, where there's no space, but the first letter of each word is uppercase, except for the first one. All right, anyways, so this is our function. We define the function. This is the function name. We're going to learn about parameters in this, on Wednesday. They go in these parentheses, but for now, they're going to be empty. And then your double dots, your colons, and then everything inside after this function call is going to be part of your function. And notice that there's a line right here as well, if you can see it. That also tells you what's part of the function, what's not. And there's these indentations. So something to keep in mind is if you do end up learning any other languages, so most languages like JavaScript, for example, they don't go by this indentation rule. Other languages, what they'll have is they'll have like curly brackets. So there's going to be a curly bracket at the beginning of the function, and then there's going to be another curly bracket at the end. So in Python, similar to with the for loops and stuff, you've probably seen there are no curly brackets. So the only thing that differentiates between what is and what isn't part of an if statement, a function, a for loop, is whether or not it's indented or not. So you really have to make sure you're on top of your indentation game. Unlike some other languages where if you do mess up the indentation, it'll still run. Another thing you can see is there's this downward arrow. If you click on that, then it's going to also show you what is and what isn't part of your function. So it's going to fold that function. So anything outside of this function, for example, this will not be folded. You can see that. So that might also help if you don't know where your function ends. All right, cool. Now that we have this, oh, by the way, if we don't do anything actually, when we press run, you realize that nothing happens. Because what a function, when we define a function, all we're telling the computer is that if we say hello, if we call the function print underscore hello, this is what we want you to do. But we haven't told the computer to do this yet. So what actually happens is that you need to call this function in order for it to run. Print underscore hello is the name of the function, and then their parentheses. So again, we'll talk about parameters and stuff on Wednesday, but for now, your parentheses will be empty. Press run. See, now this runs. So we called this function once, so whatever's inside this function will run once. So in this case, hello gets printed once, and then how are you also gets printed once. So if we want to do it more, what we need to do is paste it more time. So that's what, 5 times. If we clear the console and run it, you realize that hello, how are you is printed 5 times. So functions are one of the ways we can use for abstraction and stuff. So instead of copy pasting hello, how are you 5 times, now you can create a function and then call it with a single line. It will be especially useful in today's homework. Today's homework is I give you a song, or you can find one on your own if you would like to, but I found a song for you guys, and what I want you to do is I want you to create a function for to print out the lyrics of repeated parts of the song. So hello, how are you, for example, if that's repeated multiple times, instead of printing hello, how are you again, you can just call this function. So that's what a function basically does. And another thing is, again, that in order to run your function, you have to call your function. So if you don't call your function, it's not going to run. And another thing is you have to call your functions below the lines that you defined your functions. So if we move this under, there's going to be an error because by the time we run this, we haven't defined our function yet. So the computer is not going to know what we're talking about because the computer runs from top to bottom. So it sees all of this, but it hasn't read this part yet. So it doesn't know what print underscore hello means. So again, our function calls have to be after our function definition. Cool. Any questions about functions? If not, we are going to begin the homework. Cool. I don't think there are any questions. Well, if there are any questions, we're going to discuss them during homework time. Okay, I'm going to end no questions. Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to end the recording and then we are going to discuss the homework together.